So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today about some software tools that I've been involved with a group that we've been developing these tools together, and they are aimed at facilitating sustainable water use, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. That's a tough thing, right? But I first want to acknowledge the project partners. Obviously, I'm with Olsson. We're headquartered here in Lincoln, Nebraska, but we work across the nation. Environmental Science Associates is the other consulting company that has been working on these tools. And then we're partnered with two nonprofits, which I think is kind of cool and unique. We're working with the California Water Data Consortium, which is a relatively new nonprofit that was formed in California to help with water sustainability there, and then the Environmental Defense Fund, which a lot of you have heard of with their national and global presence. So talking about sustainable water use in the context of California's Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA. So the depletion of groundwater in California has been quite excessive over the decades, and really came to a head in 2014 with a very significant drought. And that was when the SGMA was implemented by the California legislature. And it basically requires sustainability, and the local agencies are able to step forward and do that, or the state will come in and tell those local entities what sustainability is. So the first thing that happened was, unfortunately, they didn't have a system like we do of natural resource districts, so they had to form these groundwater sustainability agencies. There's actually over 250, and that's important because any irrigator is very likely to be operating in more than one geography. And then kind of the way they've gone about this is pretty straightforward. In theory, they've developed their water budgets for these groundwater basins so that they know how much groundwater is available to be used sustainably. They've pledged to live within those means, and then they have to allocate that resource to all of the users and manage that whole system. So it sounds simple in practice, very difficult, or it sounds simple in theory, very difficult in practice to implement something like that, and that is really the reason for the development of these various tools. And just a real quick on the history following the implementation of SGMA. The original groundwater accounting platform was developed with EDF and one small water storage district called Rosedale Rio Bravo in Kern County. But in 2022, we were able to embark on a much larger project thanks to funding from the state of California through the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board. About $2 million went into development and or redevelopment of some of these tools. And that started with adding 4 additional pilot users to the original 1 user. So we had 5 users involved in the development through those last couple of years that we've been working on that, and now have branched out to beyond those pilot users. And we really had a few core visions behind the development of these tools, and open source was definitely at the top of the list. And I'm not sure how many times you've heard a consultant tell you that you can go out and hire any consultant to do this for you, but that's what I'm here to do today. So open source is a very important part of the vision for the tools. I mentioned that producers are very likely to be in more than one management geography, so multi-tenancy. A farmer, it's hard enough for him to log onto one site to figure out how much water he's used, how much he has left, much less multiple, half a dozen, who knows how many. So that was very important. So these are, they're not, for each geography, they're not standalone websites and tools. You'll go to one and log into one place and see all your data. And then we like to say we're very data agnostic. So if you like to measure water use with flow meters, great. We'll take flow meter data. If you want to measure using remote sense data, such as evapotranspiration through something like OpenET or other providers, that's great too. We can use that data. The other tool that is part of this suite of tools is something that Olsson had previously developed called the Groundwater Evaluation Toolbox. And it's a cloud-based platform for model automation. And really this is important within the context of groundwater because groundwater moves around, but very slowly. And so management decisions we make today will have ripple effects going out for many years, and the only way to really understand those is through the use of groundwater models, which are very esoteric and hard to use. So we brought this forward, and what we call the GET engine has also been open sourced as part of this platform. So just a quick tour of the various experiences that exist within the platform, starting. And I don't know why we have such a bleak image for the landowner experience here, but hopefully it's a little better than that for them. Anyway, I can show just a series of screenshots of what a landowner would see when logging into the platform. You can see here, obviously, some maps showing the parcels that they manage, charts, and graphs showing things like how much they've used against how much they're allowed to use for a given year. And in a lot of cases, these areas, you know, they're so far out of what would be considered sustainable that they're needing to ramp down slowly. So, images like this that show allocation plans and how those are going to change going forward into the future as they're required to ramp down their water use over time. So this gives each producer the ability to know where they're at, and again, like I said, if you know, they would have water accounts that would be specific to each geography, but you can't really see it, but up there on the main page, readily switch between geographies if you are a producer in multiple different geographies. Moving on to the manager experience within the platform. So this is where everything gets rolled up, and you can see for the geography as a whole, are they living within their means? And this also includes a number of more flexible tools to allow for things like pooling within certain zones within a geography. So you might set up zones like you see here and say, okay, for whatever reason, we're limiting pooling to that zone, but all your parcels that are in that particular zone, you can move your water around and use it however you want within those parcels. And you know, other things like the ability to do bulk transactions, just the various tools that are available to the water managers to do all the configuration that's needed, because that's really difficult to get this all set up for all of the landowners. We've found that it really is a full-time job, quite literally, for at least one person to be managing all of this information and the rules that go into how irrigators can use their water. And then just real quick, from the standpoint of the modeling, we have what's called scenario planning built into the platform, and this is where the water managers and really anyone that they want to have the ability to interface with the groundwater model. Right now, it's really set up just to do some relatively simple things. Here is a model of Kern County. Here you can see an interface where you can select one of two scenarios. One would be to add one or more new pumping wells and see how that might affect the water users in that area. Also, I should say, and also the ability to add recharge. And one of the things I forgot to mention, which I will since I have a little bit of time, is one of the things that makes the situation really complicated in water management is there's a lot of different colors of water that these people are using. So you have what they consider to be native yield. You have a lot of intentional recharge projects whose purpose is to put the water in the ground so it can be taken back out. People might be using surface water and groundwater, and so differentiating between the two can be really difficult. There can be, and then if an individual producer wants to do his own recharge project, that's water that they're putting into the ground that needs to be tracked. And so it can get even more complicated when you have all these different colors of water and managing the rules behind what gets used first, what's allowed to carry over, what's not, all of those types of things. And the modeling can certainly help in that regard. Whoops. So just real brief to talk about where this is going. I said it was a $2 million project that the state funded, and we're wrapping up the scope of work on that here this year. And we're really, it's starting to spread across the state of California, and we're really excited about that. We're having discussions with water districts in other states across the country as well about how it might apply. One of the great things about the open source model is you don't have to take it all as it is. You can take the parts that work good for you and develop the things that maybe aren't there that need to be for your particular situation. So that makes it really powerful in terms of traveling to different geographies across California and outside of California. And then we're looking forward to kind of the next round of work where we're going to try to build out these tools to better be able to forecast things like the ability to recharge groundwater and the ability to model those recharge scenarios that are much more complicated, looking at water quality and the implications on water quality, which we've certainly heard a lot about this morning, and a number of other things. So just really exciting project that has involved, as I said, being able to work as a consultant with nonprofits and with state agencies and local groundwater sustainability agencies and the public to implement this really important thing, which is water sustainability. Thank you.
Well, I think we are going to go ahead to our next speaker, but I'm going to have you stay up here so that afterward, well, I guess we'll go to our next plenary afterwards, but after our round of sessions and right before lunch, if you have questions for Jim, please do reach out to him. I'm sorry that we don't have more time, but I think that's a great kind of holistic approach to what we're trying to do here, and it's great to have the science, but I think it's really important too to have the tools to help us implement things and see things in a really understandable way. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to introduce Samir Ibrahim, the CEO of SunCulture. He was also on our View from the Field panel, so you got a little familiar with what he does, but we're going to take some time here for him to explain kind of the full approach to his business model out of Kenya. So it's all yours, Samir.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Morning. Thank you. How many people have been to any place in Africa? Yeah, I knew I was in the right place. This is awesome. I'm actually not going to talk too much about my business today, but I'm going to talk about sort of the shock factor that I get when I tell people that we work with 60,000 smallholder farmers, most of whom have a smartphone. Thank you. My slides made it. Most of whom have a smartphone, who like taking digital trainings on our app, who pay us back on a monthly basis. That I get a lot of shock when we say that you can build businesses in Africa for smallholder farmers that are for-profit businesses that aren't philanthropy. So today I'm going to share with you how we think about Africa and why we think now is a good time to invest. And I'm going to share with you 3 secrets to investing in Africa. So not much about my business, but more holistically on how you might think about working on the continent. Now, it's worth saying that Africa is not one place. It's a continent of 54 countries, thousands of languages, and a staggering range of policies, histories, and markets. So I avoid usually talking about Africa as a monolith, but today I will, because the demographic momentum shaping the continent it's continental. And the opportunities that it affords for investors who are willing to invest responsibly and with time are incredible. So bear with me as I talk about Africa as sort of one place, but we've all seen this map before. It's absolutely not. Africa is the world's largest and fastest growing continent. By 2050, 1 in 4 people in the entire world will be African. 1 in 3 people of working age will be African, and 50% of all new entrants into the job force will be in Africa. Yet Africa only accounts for 3% of global output and 5% of global growth. Now that's the opportunity. This disconnect between demographic power and economic output is one of the defining challenges and opportunities of our future. Africa is urbanizing without industrializing. It's growing socially without transforming economically. This creates a tension, of course, but it also creates a really interesting window. Right now, more than 80% of jobs in Africa are informal. Can you believe that? Informal, meaning that people get paid without pay slips. So no W-9s, no 1099s. They're just informal jobs paid with cash or mobile money. 80% of all new jobs are informal. Too many people are self-employed not by choice, but by necessity. There's this sort of term of forced entrepreneurship. Everyone talks about the amazing entrepreneurship in Africa, but it's not a choice, it's a necessity. The gap between Africa and the rest of the world has widened. So in 1960, GDP per capita in sub-Saharan Africa was about half of the global average. Today, it's a fourth. East Africa was on par with the rest of the world. I think there was this stat around comparing Southeast Asia to countries in Africa and how they were on the same growth trajectory. I was looking for it now, I don't have it, but the difference in GDP and productivity has widened so tremendously over the last 60 years, and that's a huge issue. The catch-up potential of this is massive. So if you look at, I know I've left this slide up for a while, but if you look at the slide, you can see that if sub-Saharan Africa increased productivity growth from 1% to 4%, it would account for 1/5 of all global growth by 2050. So that's the difference between Africa being left behind and becomes the next engine of global growth. And that's what I mean by a window of opportunity and the tension that creates this. It's no surprise that people are starting to pay attention. The CEO of Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund, was in Ivory Coast last year hosting an event. The CEO of JP Morgan Chase, JP Diamond, did a tour of Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria. He was trying to build a network that he called a gift to the next generation. UAE's biggest company is looking at African assets, and this was a quote from a Bridgewater report. Africa can become the next major engine of global growth. So with that, I'm going to share some advice on how I would look at Africa. So first, I would pick the winners. Unlike 10 years ago, when the venture market in Africa really started picking up, one of the biggest shifts that I've seen over the past decade is that we now have visible winners. Companies that have sort of weathered the early turbulence. They got through COVID. They're positioned to scale, and they're growing quite significantly. We have companies that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue on the continent, very profitable, and have a lot of potential to scale with very professional investors. I think that this is very different than when anyone looked 10 years ago. It often takes longer to build in Africa than in the US, something to note. Many of these companies, as a result, have remarkably little competition. I know in the US, using the term monopoly is illegal, but when you think about companies that have weathered the storm for 10, 15, 20 years, they've now really become the only game in town. So when you look at investing right now, what's different and the advantage that you have is you can pick people and companies that have no competition. And that's really interesting from an investor perspective. They're almost right now safer bets than what you would look at 10 years ago, and they have potential for outsized returns because of it. So one, pick winners, and there's very clear winners now, and it's a really unique opportunity. Two, I would say back consolidation. Winners won't just scale organically. They'll become consolidators, acquiring smaller companies and adjacencies and within their own ecosystems. That's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. Consolidation is a sign of a maturing market, and it creates new values for investors. We're starting to see that now, and if you think about the sort of canary in the coal mines, once you start seeing consolidation, you start to recognize that a market is maturing quite significantly. So you have large companies that are buying smaller companies, provides a really unique opportunity for investors to get in as this is happening right now. And third, be selective by country. Not all countries are created equal. Again, Africa is not one place. Some have the institutions and the demographics and the macroeconomic discipline to support long-term growth, some don't. And that's factual. The investor's job, your job, is to tell the difference. You don't need to be in 25 countries in Africa to have a big business. You can be in 1, 2, 3 countries and have incredible impact and incredible returns. So I would say these are 3 secrets to investing in Africa right now. And I'll take it all back to this map. This is, as you know, the Mercator projection. It shows what is hung up on every school in the country, and it shows our perception of what the world looks like. To me, this also represents an incredible big misunderstanding of the risk and the opportunity in Africa. Africa is shown as quite a small continent relative to the size that it is right now, which is the first slide that I showed. The question that I ask everyone is, what's your perception right now? Are you misunderstanding risks? Are you mispricing risks? Are you missing out on opportunities because you're still stuck in the old way of thinking? I think the ones who are smart are there, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. So if anybody wants to talk about their Africa strategy, how to enter, how to think about things, I'm always happy to help. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Samir. And yeah, very insightful. I learned a lot there. So thank you. We do have a couple of minutes, so I will open it up to some questions if anyone has any. There are mics on each side of the room. Otherwise, I can kick it off with one too. And if you have a question for Jim, that's just fine too. So, okay. I want to, I guess, bring it back to SunCulture, and I learned a little bit about your company earlier yesterday. And so I just was wondering if you could share maybe a case study or a specific strategy that you've used to navigate maybe some unique infrastructure or logistics challenges in a country in Africa that maybe would be of interest to this group.
How much time do we have?
Like 3 minutes.
What I think we can go for an infrastructure challenge. So when it rains, everything changes. I think it's important to know. We work with partners. My business does the installation of solar irrigation systems and the delivery of them as well. So we handle sort of last mile installation for our customers. Our engineers need to get to the farms in order to do installations. And the ingenuity that our engineering team has had to bring on board has been incredible. So when it rains, sometimes our team will have to take boats across rivers that pop up randomly that weren't there last week. I've had pictures sent to us of donkeys delivering our irrigation systems versus cars. So I think the lesson that we've taken away is that like logistics and infrastructure challenges happen everywhere. You just have to localize the response, and there are local solutions that work. So taking all of the amazing infrastructure experience that people have in the US, for example, doesn't necessarily apply to the US, but the thinking, the philosophy, the financial structures do, but then the operational, the ground game must adapt to the region. So what we tell people who are investing on the continent is take all the experience you have, all the sophistication you have, building and growing and investing in businesses in the global north, but make sure you adapt it to localized operations. So how do you move things from point A to B? Don't get married to needing to use cars for everything. Motorcycles, trucks, boats, donkeys, all work okay. That would be the summary of it.
Great. Thank you. And I appreciate you taking that quick question from me. So I don't see any other questions in the audience. So just join me in thanking Jim and Samir again for being with us today.